You must be laughing.
So that's about that.
Wow, she's tough.
Am I tough? Hi everyone, this is Cara from Aventure, and today we have Dr. Yong. Welcome. Would you mind telling me about yourself and your research journey?
I'm Yong, currently the professor for horticulture over at Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences at Alnarp. I'm a biochemist and physiologist by training, but I'm sort of fairly multidisciplinary at this moment, covering all aspects of cultivation. So whatever you want to grow, come and look for me.
Brilliant. And are there anything fun that you're growing at the moment?
We are trying to grow things naturally without using chemical fertilizers. So not about the plants, but more about the source of fertilizer. So basically, the current activity is we are going towards sustainable fertilizers. So that's the big drive right now.
So through your research with plants and cultivation, etc., is there a project that you had the most fun with? Because you've also traveled quite a lot also.
Yeah, although I'm a biochemist, a physiologist, but I work across all the different plant groups. So the most important thing right now is the group of plants that we talked about earlier. They are the coastal plants called mangroves. And as I was trying to share with a lot of the European colleagues, including you, from a cooler climate, is that the mangroves are ultimately the key driver for reducing climate change. This is a little bit hard for the European audience because you don't have mangroves or coastal trees naturally along your coast here, salt marshes. So these are the ongoing efforts in education, especially in Lund, that I'm giving talks about mangroves, all right, which is so far away. And you don't really have mangroves on the European continent. The nearest is across at Africa. But this is where a lot of the European funding should be put out to the African countries, to the less developed parts of Asia and Americas, so that if they keep their mangrove, their coastal forests, we have a better chance in fighting climate change.
And can you explain a bit more about how protecting mangroves can help with?
So the key fundamental difference between the marine plants and the terrestrial plants is that the roots are embedded in oxygen-free environment and under saline condition, and that locks up the carbon permanently. But just imagine a forest fire you have in conifer forest in Northern Europe. All the carbon goes back to the atmosphere. But if you preserve the mangroves, they're all locked underwater and you don't burn underwater. So that is the breakthrough. And there are several recent important publications in leading journals like Science and Nature. So the evidence is mounting the importance of blue carbon. So this is where the blue carbon gives you better, that means the investment in science, and in return for carbon sequestration, you actually get a better deal. That means for the Europeans, to help the less developed countries with lots of mangrove. And Indonesia is one example. They are the world with the largest tracts of mangroves, but one of the not too wealthy countries. So just think along all the African coast, the Latin American coast, the answer is very obvious. That means we do a better job in really tackling climate change when we try to help the other countries to keep a vegetation type that does the best job for carbon sequestration. So this is where we are now.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And can you talk a bit about the economic incentives that comes out of this?
So unless you develop a global carbon trading system and all that. So right now, most of these talks and all that dwells on carbon sequestration in terrestrial forests. The Amazons is definitely important. But after you leave the Amazon, the coastal fringes of Amazon has to be considered because the coastal fringes of Amazon contains mangroves. They are the coastal ones. So right now, most of the calculation, they only look at the land side of it. So this is where we are proposing that effort should also be channeled to the coastal forest. And actually, in the worst case scenario, your coastal ones are your guaranteed deposits because they are kept under oxygen free, we call it anaerobic. But most important, underwater. And wood underwater
Safe there.
is locked in, is sequestered permanently. So this is a thing that we are trying to push, but it's not easy.
Certainly. And earlier you also mentioned that you have a collaboration with the food technology department here in Lund University.
Yes. So we are doing a lot of what they call cultivation. So at Alnarp, we are very proficient in growing. So the key breakthrough nowadays is to grow the same product but using sustainable and organic fertilizers. And the organic is not like what people think, it's defined organics. That means you actually know the constituent of the fertilizer. So most people treat organic fertilizer as a black box. So this is why the variability in organic products is very high. Because certain days your bacteria are happy, you get a certain profile of
In the
product.
soil, you mean?
Yes, in the soil, but that will affect your harvestable parts. It could be flowers, it could be fruits or leaves. So if you can really define and make it more predictable, the organic amendments or organic fertilizers added in cultivation, you are very close to conventionally grown product using known concentration of fertilizers, chemical fertilizers.
Can you demystify this for us a little bit? The word organic is so widely used, but so poorly understood, I think.
Simply because at present, the parameters for organic fertilizers are based on inorganic units. So nobody measure the type of microorganisms in organic fertilizer. Have you seen it
the
on
fertilizer itself?
Yes, but they are the drivers for the efficacy of adding organic amendments. So this is where I'm addressing is actually a little bit dysfunctional. So this is partly attributed, it's not just Swedish system, but the way science have developed. So the people in agriculture has forgotten about the very high-end chemistry, like mass spectrometry. So you can measure the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium using a spectrophotometer. But to determine the active compounds in organics, they are called biostimulants, you require a mass spectrometer because they are in a nanograms level. So the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, they are in the milligram range. So the people doing organics at the moment, because they don't know too much chemistry,
The focus is on
they are using organics, but the rubrics are for inorganics. So this is where the mismatch is there. So it takes an outsider like me to come in and to put things together. Yeah. So it's coming to place. So this is why you see it as different, what do you call, bioactive compounds or different tastes, as the Lund colleagues are seeing in their analysis.
All right.
So this is a breakthrough. So everyone say, oh no, the fertilizer, in terms of inorganics, they are the same. But then the moment you put in the microbiome, that means the microbiology, the type of bacteria, the type of fungus, and the metabolites that we call biostimulants that are functioning like a catalyst, it explains the changes in flavor and the taste. And people even do sensory touch for other labs around the world. So once you fix the organics, making it more defined, you will be very close to what people will accept for conventionally grown vegetables or fruits. And this is why I'm here, to explain to them the importance of the defining organics and no longer a black box.
Yeah, that's actually an area that I had no idea about.
And the organics doesn't stop there, and it goes into your area of degraded land restoration. So, back in Australia, where we have over 60,000 mines that have not been rehabilitated properly, the way is to put chemical fertilizers. So if you do a simple regular soil analysis, the soil or the disrupted, degraded mine sites actually have sufficient chemical fertilizers. But what is really missing are the microbiome, producing the sort of things that we talk about. So this is where organics, especially soil organic carbon, has a big role in mining restoration. That means you trying to put back the native vegetation post-mining. So this is a big effort. So this is where the secret recipe is ultimately to apply organic fertilizers post-mining, for post-mining closure.
Yeah, it's a big topic, and oftentimes you see these pictures of absolute wastelands from mining activities, and coming from a place where mining was very heavily industrialized.
So for ecological restoration to speed it up, so the secret recipe based on all this thing is you have to build up the organic carbon, and adding organics, define organics as what I was saying, is the fastest way to build up the soil organic carbon that ultimately are the food providers for the tiny organisms, providing all the biostimulants. Yep.
Yeah, and how does this apply to Sweden, in particular to mining, to...
Okay, like for example, you have mines up at Kiruna, so to enhance the closure and to bring it back as natural as possible, the original Swedish vegetation upon mine site closure, you have to know what was there. And Sweden has done a very good job. They actually designate areas where there is no tech so that you could estimate or work out roughly what was the original microorganisms there. And post-mining, you try to
match that.
That is the reference point, and you have a degraded site, and you try to move towards that. And the path to take towards that requires the organic, as what I was talking about. So Sweden is the model for the world.
Yeah, in a way. But for all these mine sites in the world, do we use the same kind of organics application?
Right now, everyone is still, just like the agriculture sector, everyone is still very conventional. Partly because of the difficulty to estimate the bioactive compounds. So we are in the process trying to get there. Many people have tried, but they did not measure the metabolites. I mean, they focus on the species of bacteria or fungus, but they forgot that what the fungus and the bacteria are giving to the plants, they are the biostimulants. Those are the ones that are very hard to measure. You require mass spectrometry. So it's very hard to get a chemistry department supporting microbiology as well as agriculture, a traditional agriculture department. So that is what I'm trying to do. And
the cross-linking.
To put people to have Fika together. So when you have Fika, you cross boundaries. And more important for scientists who tend to work in silos, the world has problems that are very, what you call, cross-disciplinary. But the solution providers, the boring scientists like us, we are in our little silos. So you need to have Fika together to talk, and then we build up the lagom, the Swedish way of balance in providing the solution. So the microbiologists will ask the chemists, hey, could you measure for me the nanograms using your mass spectrometry? And then the agriculture people will put it in a right way where the microorganisms are protected. So after that, this team of people, send them up to Kiruna. The same agriculture practice, but now applied on a degraded Swedish mine site. The principles are the same, it's still restoring the vegetation. So instead of an agricultural setting, now it's under a natural ecological habitat setting. And then you speed up the process of succession. So I'm almost there. So we have published all the guidelines already. Now is to help the people to walk through. So that's why I'm here.
Lastly, I do have a question about your experience here in Sweden, because you previously started out in Singapore and then spent quite a few years in Australia, and coming to Sweden, a totally different, let's say, environment, culturally and landscape. What would you describe the difference to be of the scientific philosophy, so to speak, here?
The places that I went to, Australia, I spent quite a bit of time in US at Brown University and then later at MIT. Australia is both Eastern and Western. So these are all very British. And Singapore was an ex-British colony. So we are more on the Anglo-Saxon kind of thinking. Which is very different from the Swedish. The Swedish people are more quiet, I would be very upfront. They are very nice, but they are less expressive until you really get to know them. The British also have the tea. You have your Fika, but it's still very, what you call, more individualistic when you look at the Nordic experience. But again, it's very personal. If you spend time to interact with them, they're very cozy people. But the big difference is actually not really the people, but the houses. Swedish houses are the best, with the best insulation, okay, compared to any of the... Oh, no. There are places in Australia that are -5, okay, in Canberra up front. A lot of people didn't know, up on the hill. Is very high up. So the Swedish houses is the best thing that, if you ask me honestly, is what I really appreciate after coming to Sweden. The people factor, that is similar, but it is the structure of the universities. They tend to be a bit silo.
Yeah, so
they are a bit more, but again, it depends. If you are a bubbly character, love to go to Fika, talking to people, you bridge the gap. It's not easy. I have to come all the way to Lund to talk to all of you. So I came up all the way, but I've done that many times to Uppsala and all that. So you have to be reaching out to the Swedish people that will, in response, come out from their natural Nordic. It's not a stereotype. It takes a longer time versus the Anglo-Saxon culture. So the Anglo-Saxon, they tend to be warm, but you may not really get to know them. But the Swedish, once you know them, they're very warm. All right, and I know the level of warmness when I get invited personally to their family Christmas party. So that is something very treasured by the Swedish people. And I've been invited to many parties now. Personal family. So this is where the Fika factor helps. But at workplace, the organization is still pretty silo. So unfortunately, it takes time to change. So basically, the chemistry department is not talking enough with, for example, the agriculture department. So this is where I'm bringing the high-end chemistry and high-end microbiology into agriculture, and then linking that back to food sciences and clinical trials. So I'm one of the few crazy horticulture person that understood clinical testing.
Wow.
So during the conversation earlier, so everyone, whoa. So this is where the synergy, I would not know everything, but I know what are the important parts to take care in cultivation, so that my colleague at the preclinical and clinical testing, she has reproducible results. So this is where that sensitivity have to be integrated. So that is still not really there yet, but it's a little bit more established, especially in the North American and the general Anglo-Saxon, referring to Australia, New Zealand, and all the past colonies like Hong Kong. So this is where we have the sort of global view. So still love the Nordic culture. It takes a while.
Yeah.
So
but you're here doing the intersectionality.
Yes, I'm a fourth year here, so we are very happy. We love our house. It's better insulated than the ones we have back in Australia or in the US. Yep.
Okay. Well, it's very great to have you here, enjoying the houses, but great to have you here for this interview to introduce to us what's happening in the field of agriculture and all the exciting intersectional activities that are happening. So
Thank you for having me. I don't know whether it makes sense to you. I'm just being honest.